Okay, awesome. Okay, so we'll get started. People will filter in while we are doing our little intros, but I just wanted to start off by saying hello to everyone and thank you so much for coming to tonight's event. Tonight's event is called Curve's Hidden Treasures, Archive Uncovered. My name is Julia Rosenzweig. I'm tuning in from unceded Tongva aka Los Angeles. I am the Archive and Outreach Manager for the Curve Foundation, and I'm honored to be facilitating this event with our friends from Gerber Hart Libraries and Archives and the June L. Mazer Lesbian Archives. Please feel free to throw a hello and where you are into the chat. Just a quick note that this event is being recorded, but only the presenters will be on view. We also have closed captioning enabled. So tonight will be a virtual show and tell of archival Curve magazine materials housed at each institution, with reflections from the founder, Franco Stevens, and discussion with the archivists who steward these materials. Each institution will also share a little bit about their organization's history. We've chosen materials that center community, belonging, and gathering, honoring Curve magazine's legacy of connecting lesbians across the world through journalism, pop culture, and gathering. We hope to share behind-the-scenes stories, educate, and most importantly, enjoy being in community with you all. We will have a portion for audience questions towards the end of the event. You can either save them until that time, or you can put them in the chat, as Angela has graciously agreed to monitor and record questions so that they can be addressed during the appropriate time. In the meantime, we ask that you please mute yourselves during this event, but we encourage you to engage with one another, react, comment in the chat. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenters. So as I mentioned before, hello, my name is Julia. I am the Archive and Outreach Manager for the Curve Foundation. I focus on stewarding the digital collection of Curve magazine and activating its cultural significance through community-centered programming. Prior to this position, I earned a master's in library science at Pratt Institute, managed the Lesbian Elders Oral History Project for LHA, and processed collections at the Brooklyn Museum. With me are Franco Stevens, Jen Dentel, Aza Babayan, and Angela Brinskelly. Franco is the founder of Curve Magazine and co-founder of the Curve Foundation. She is a member of the NLGJA Association of LGBTQ plus Journalists Hall of Fame and has been awarded some of queer journalism's most respected awards. She has also served on the board of GLAAD, co-founded the San Francisco LGBT Center, and actively advocates for lesbian visibility. Jen is the Community Outreach and Strategic Partnerships Manager at Gerber Hart Library and Archives in Chicago, where she has volunteered for 10 years. Jen helps manage Gerber Hart's community programming and social media accounts, and has also helped curate exhibits, process collections, and co-create Gerber Hart's podcast, Unboxing Queer History, which I highly recommend for everyone to listen to. Aza is a project archivist at the June L. Mazer Lesbian Archives in Los Angeles, where they've worked in some capacity or another since 2019. Aza has been processing the Curve magazine collection there and managing the digitization of the Subject Files collection, a project funded in part by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. Angela is a photographer who has documented the lesbian community for over 30 years, and she is also the Director of Communications for the June L. Mazer Lesbian Archives for the last 17 years. Okay, so now we'll get started with our first presentation, starting with Gerber Hart about their history and some materials relating to Curve magazine. So I'll throw it over to Jen.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia. And thanks everyone for coming tonight. I'm really excited, and I'm just going to pull up my slides. All right. Does that look okay on your end? Beautiful. All right. So I'm here to talk about Gerber Hart. I'm Jen Dentel, and I'm in Chicago right now. I am not at Gerber Hart. I'm at home right now, but I do have a lot of photos of Gerber Hart to share with you. So this is a photo of our archives at Gerber Hart. So who are we? We are an LGBTQ plus library and archives. We were founded in 1981, and our mission is to collect, preserve, and make accessible the LGBTQ plus history of Chicago and the Midwest. You can see a few things here. This is special collections. We have a group from an art school in Chicago standing underneath the Tongue, which is from a drag bar called Carol's Speakeasy. And then this is our library. In the very back, you can see some very small posters of Rachel Maddow and Margaret Cho from, I believe, the late 90s. So yeah, we are almost entirely volunteer based. As of September, we actually have 3 full-time staff members, which is very exciting. And we are privately funded. So we're not part of the public library system. We are entirely funded by donations and grants. And then, oh, nope, that's the very end. Spoiler alert. Okay, so a couple things about us, and you can see some photos here of our Queer Barbie exhibit, which opened in August, which was a lot of fun. One of my favorite pulp novels in our rare books collection, and then Unboxing Queer History is the podcast that we co-created. So few things, we have a circulating library where anyone over 13 can check out books for free. There's no fees associated with it. And then we have an archives with a lot of different organizations and individuals from Chicago and the Midwest. And then a special collections, which is where Curve lives, which is where our periodicals, artwork, posters, erotica, and all sorts of things live as well. If you want to learn more, I'll drop some links in the chat later, but go to our website, our Instagram, or listen to Unboxing Queer History. And if you're in Chicago, we would love you to volunteer. All right, so Curve. This is our collection of Curve at Gerber Hart, so anyone in Chicago can access these copies. This is also the box that Franco and Jen shipped to us with some more issues, so we have an almost complete collection now, which is very exciting. So this is where Deneuve and Curve, this is what it looks like when it's in our reading room, but Curve usually lives right here. So I just put an arrow of where Curve is in our archives or in special collections, so it's in cold storage. But anyone can access it. They would just let one of our volunteers know or a staff member, and they would bring it out to them in the reading room. So Curve lives in the same place as some other periodicals like Lavender Woman, which was the first LGBTQ or the first lesbian periodical in Chicago. The Ladder, which was the first lesbian periodical in the US. So it's in great company, and we keep a large collection of periodicals and newsletters accessible to researchers and artists. We've had a lot of artists using the collection lately too. So I just wanted to talk a little bit, and I'm curious to hear Franco's thought too, but kind of reflecting on some of the events in Curve magazine and how they show up at Gerber Hart in our archives. So for example, this issue of Curve with Joan Jett has a cover article about the Chicago Gay Games. So we have a gay games collection at Gerber Hart, which includes a lot of materials from Team Chicago. So I went through and pulled out this little volleyball and a few different brochures. And so that corresponds with a lot of the information inside the article about where to go in Chicago. I'm curious, I don't know if I'll finish the slides, but then I'd love to hear what Franco has to say about the gay games in Chicago, just hearing more about what that was like. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is travel guides. So these 2 issues, so one of Deneuve and one of Curve, talk about the places to meet other people in different cities. So whether it was bars, clubs, bookstores, there's a guide to Chicago in both of these issues. And that really correlates well with our large collection of travel guides. So we have several local guides to Chicago queer spaces. We have a lot of women's travel guides as well for national and international travel. So you can see a few of those. This 1988 one with the very 1988 jeans is a favorite cover of mine. But yeah, so different ways for people to find the spaces where they would be welcome, where they were, whether it was a bookstore like Women and Children First, which is still around, or I really enjoyed reading this article about Chicago places to go out. And one of the top places was Paris Dance, which I've heard a lot of people share how much they loved Paris Dance. So I just put it up with a guide. One of our, I think it's Places of Interest to Women, has a big ad for Paris Dance as well. Yeah, and so that's kind of a little bit about Gerber Hart, but if you want to learn more, please feel free to email me. I'll drop my email in the chat as well. And please give us a follow online. And I'd love to hear from Franco about the gay games and just about Chicago and general impressions of Chicago.
Do you want me to go now or should I wait?
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for that, Jen, so much. Let's let's keep it fresh. Franco, let's see what your reactions are. I'd love to hear if there's Any memories of Paris dance?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, we definitely hit Paris Dance and a bunch of other Chicago locations on one of our many tours across the country. I think that was the Great Northern Tour where we spent a lot of time in Chicago. But when you mentioned the Chicago Gay Games from 2006, that really sparked some fond memories. Curve did three big parties besides covering the gay games there. And I pulled out, look what I have, the actual guide from the gay games. And here's the ad for the parties that we did.
Oh my gosh.
I know. We had a party called the Black Bra International, and everyone was encouraged to sport their black bras. And I think um, when our staff was going around and handing out flyers and stuff, some of them were like, "Can I please wear a black bra and no shirt?" I know it's kind of against company policies of not wearing clothes, but I was like, "Oh, well, if you really want to, but there's no pressure. I just want you to know." And yeah, that was pretty funny. And we had a lot of the L word celebrities there at the parties. And I just remember we had the final party that we had, which was called Adrenaline. It was on at some club, and it was 3 stories or 4 stories tall. And they didn't have a working elevator, and I'm disabled. So they had this huge bodyguard that just like, he's like, "I'm just going to put you on my back." I'm like, "Oh, I really don't like to be carried." He's like, "I'm just going to put you on my back, and wherever you need to go, that's where I'm going to take you." And I think the entire party, I was like, he was just shuttling me from place to place. And one thing that I really loved about those parties was that we'd make a big mock blow up of the cover of the magazine so that people could stand in front of it. And if you allow me to share my screen, I can show you a couple of those items.
Yes, you should be good to go.
Okay. Let me get to the right.
Yeah, I saw one of the parties was at the Metro, which was a really great venue in Chicago and big too. So I can imagine it full.
Yeah, we definitely had some big stuff. Okay, let me get to, yeah, we believe that celebrating and being happy to be in community was really a big part of the magazine. And so the parties that we threw were really meant to bring the community together. Okay, so let me see how I can share my screen. Share screen. There we go. So here's an example of those big posters that we used to put up. And each one would say something different. This is actually the one that we had at the gay games parties. So you could pose in front of that. Oh, here's here's an image from the Black Bra party that we had. And here is Janina Gavankar, who was Poppy in the L Word, signing some magazines at one of the Chicago Gay Games photos. And there we are with at that event. Let's see what else. Oh, this has nothing to do with that, but when I was scanning my issues, I found this lovely photo which shows just how confusing it was where to put Curve magazine, because there wasn't a dedicated lesbian section in many bookstores. So you can see this one has got next to Bible prophecies and some enlightenment. They just had no idea where to put this thing.
Was that like at a Barnes and Noble or a Borders, or what kind of space do you remember
Yeah,
looking?
that was like at a mainstream bookstore. But one thing I wanted to mention is that I'm going to stop sharing, is how great Women and Children First was to Curve magazine. Not only did they put the magazine up front and center there in Chicago, but they sold tickets to events that we had. So it's like kind of we brought people into the bookstore to buy tickets, and then they could buy other stuff. And it was really a great way of sort of bringing the community together.
That's really wonderful to hear. And I know I'm so proud that Women and Children First is still here in Chicago. So having that space is so critical. But it's lovely to hear. I saw them pop up in several of the issues, which was wonderful.
Now, I'm wondering if you had any memories or recollections about the gay games in particular in Chicago.
Oh yeah, I think I went to so many sporting events. For some reason, I thought if I could really capture this for the magazine, if you wanted to come over here, I have probably like 500 photos, everything from softball to soccer to, women in bars drinking and flirting and having fun. Um, and it was kind of that last hurrah for me. Um, you know, I don't know if there's been gay games since then. That was definitely the last one that I went to. So it really holds a special place in my heart. I just love the coming together of community like that. Oh, and we were giving away these t-shirts at the Curve party, so and in Chicago, so I specifically wore this one for y'all.
I love that. And I was going to say, you reminded me, I meant to take a picture of it, but you went through and you had coverage of a lot of the women that were competing as athletes, but you also had a behind the scenes, and you had a few different Chicago journalists that were photographed, and you had Tracy Bame, really like 90s Tracy Bame, and that made my day seeing that. So just like giving credit to, okay, here are the journalists on the ground in Chicago. So that was lovely.
Cool. Well, I have some other fun things to share, but I want to make sure we have time for everyone to say something.
Yeah, do we have any reflections from Angela or Aza about these materials at Gerber Hart Library and Archives?
Aza, did you want to say something?
Oh no, go ahead.
I just wanted to read a comment. Jen Kelly said, "Will the travel guides you mentioned?" She said, "Will these help me travel in time to Chicago back to the 70s?" And I said, "I'm sure they will." But I so appreciated you including women athletes. I mean, I was an athlete at the time, and I so appreciated that because, women athletes historically were kind of shamed for being strong and physically so agile and have such talent. And it was just such a celebration of it in a way I hadn't seen before. So I really appreciated that too.
Yeah, that's a legacy that continued in the magazine for so long. Okay, so now I think we can move on to what Aza and Angela have to present from the June L. Mazur Lesbian Archives. I'm curious to see what you're bringing to the table.
All right. I will go ahead and share my screen. Angela, do you want to go ahead and give a little history and intro about the archive itself?
I wanted to ask you, Aza, how many boxes total would you say Curve is now?
Oh, we can get to that. It is not completely rehoused, so I don't have a complete number, but when the collection first came in, it was in, I would say about 45 bankers boxes and a lot of oddly shaped poster tubes.
Right. A lot of oddly shaped boxes. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was about 45. I would say it would be like 55 cubic feet if we were to measure like that, but it's approximately 50-ish linear feet as well, which is, sizable.
Yeah, I honestly think it's up there with the largest collection in the archive anytime ever, before it or after. I think 50 boxes is the biggest collection we ever had. And Curve was right there with it. In fact, it took up a row almost in the archives. And we loved it. We were so happy to have it. It was donated by somebody, I think, who's here today. Let me see. I saw her name earlier.
Holly the Mag, shout out.
It's
Yeah.
me. It's Holly.
Hey, Holly.
Yay. If it wasn't for Holly, I don't know what would have happened. But yeah, she got it into the archives in Southern California, and it was I think it was driven in her truck or different trucks down. We didn't have it shipped, so she really made sure it got to us. And it was pretty organized too, where there were some indexes for the boxes, which we weren't used to either. So very organized group of women who got this collection to us. So thank you, Holly, again for that. I wanted to say too, I love the first pictures that were showing the actual printing presses, and was wondering, Franco, if you had experience in printing presses before that, because that kind of looked a little intimidating to me, some of those photos, but really incredible at the same time.
Yeah, no, I had no prior knowledge of printing presses. And that photo that you were just at, the Dykes to Watch Out For, I'd love to explain a little bit more about that. So back in the day, before some things were computerized and some things we just left holes with explanations for the printer. So for example, we would supply a box and what page this goes on, you'll see page 37, and it's going to run at 70% of size. So we'd actually have to deliver those materials separately to the printer to make sure that they got in the magazine correctly.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you want to learn more about this, we actually have a facsimile of this process up at the GLBT Historical Society Museum until, I believe, early January. We have Curve Cartoon exhibit up there. So if anybody is local to San Francisco, check it out.
Yeah. And I would like to just say something about the printing. So back in the day where we were printing the magazine, first printing the magazine especially, we couldn't find a printer in the United States to accept it. It was taboo. So I ended up calling some of my friends that had gay male porn magazines and just saying, hey, where do you print that thing? Like, if you can print that, that's where I need to go. So that's where we had to actually go. We printed this thing in the middle in Kansas, in a place where there was just porn, mostly porn. But I learned that they weren't the most efficient. So I would fly out every month to have the magazine to oversee the printing. And I think the place was held together with bubble gum, and there was always people chain smoking on the printing line. And they'd say, okay, come in at 4 a.m. for your press check. And then I'd get there at 3 just to be safe. And then they'd go, oh, the roll of paper, it just broke and you're just going to have to wait. And so instead of it taking like a day to print all the magazines, it would probably sometimes take a week. I'd be there just waiting for them to call me.
That is crazy. Asa, can you go to the slide? Yeah, I was going to comment too about the Dykes to Watch Out For. I mean, another thing that was so amazing about Curve magazine is that there was an obvious sense of the history of lesbians before it began. And it was very clear that the community was really thought about when creating the magazine, even though it was a high gloss magazine. So that was something very impressive when you look through the history in the archives as well. Because that wasn't just any comic you put in there, was it?
No.
There were a lot of artists whose materials, a lot of less popular mainstream artists, but very popular within like the queer network at the time. And that is one of the highlights too. There are writers like Melinda Lowe who worked at the magazine. There are also a lot of layout, production, and proof designs that we have in paper, and they're also born digital on CDs and hard drives. Not sure how to access those. and a lot of submissions to the Lesbian Life Photo Contest, which is, none of those images are included here. It's like a really large part of the collection, but I do know that the Kerr Foundation recently revived that tradition. And we also have a lot of audio recordings of interviews. Those are on cassette tapes. And most of what I'm going to show here is photographs from tours, just of the staff. Spreading the word about the magazine. So here is the first set.
Yeah, I was really wondering when I first looked through the collection when we first got it, and I thought, do all magazines tour the country and and visit all different cities with groups of women like this? I mean, I think it was, again, Franco, I don't know what gave you the idea to do this, or if you just felt like you had to do it for publicity, but it was such a brilliant idea. And you also made sure that you documented your travels and all the PR you did. And was that your idea?
Well, listen, we knew we had to try something different because back when we started the magazine, there wasn't the internet. Women were, reaching our community was so difficult, especially because so many people were not able to be out. So to meet them where they were was the most important thing. How can you do that besides, we always tease like, oh, let's, go out and shake hands and, kiss some babies like politicians. But we put an ad in the magazine just asking for folks to connect us with their folks. So, hey, will you, invite some people for a house party? And maybe we'll go to, the bookstore while we're there. And then we'll go to a nightclub and then we'll do a radio show. I remember our marketing director, which is the one in this Danuve picture with the blue hat. She had us like in a different city every single day. So a typical day would be like this: wake up at 6 a.m., drive 500 miles, arrive at a bookstore or a coffee shop and do a reading or a meet and greet, followed by a radio interview, a party at somebody's house where they would luckily feed us. Then we'd go out to a dance club until about 4:00 in the morning and hand out magazines. And then we'd get in the car the next morning. I mean, I guess that's what you can do when you're 20 something years old, you have a lot more energy. But we had some amazing connections during those tours. We used to ride around. Actually, I wanted to show you this because I snagged this out of my box of goodies. So the vans we used to drive around with had these lovely real license plates on them. And we had a magnetic sign on the side of the vehicle that said like, Danuve, Great American Tour, Lesbian Magazine or something. And so everywhere we rolled into, like, there it was. Yeah, look at that. There's the van. It was chocker block full of magazines. In fact, one time we almost tipped over. We had so many magazines. We kind of made
my gosh.
Yeah, I was looking over the budget today from those tours. One of them was $11,000 for 40 days on the road, including $4,650 worth of free promotional materials that we gave out.
Holy cow.
I know it was something else.
But see, you're filming there and you've got a microphone and you're documenting the whole thing too, which is really amazing.
Yeah, and I don't know if people have seen Ahead of the Curve, the movie about the magazine. The poster's right there behind me. But a lot of the video footage that we took on the tour and what have you made it into the movie. And it was really an exciting time to be out and meeting new women. And, I just felt so incredibly lucky to be doing the job that I was doing and helping people. Yeah. So thank you.
And
look, there was that party.
yeah, that's so funny that you actually opened that to the same ad because we had that in our slideshow as well.
Yeah, there was this ad and then another one for adrenaline, the next part, the
Oh
big
yeah.
talking about um
See,
I
yeah,
was
it's an event for the it was an event for the readers, it was an event for the celebrities, it was, a way of getting the word out and celebrating and being in community. Yeah. It was hard to go from being on the road and then we'd have to come back and get the magazine to press. And I wanted to share this little photo with you all. I don't know if y'all can see that, but that is our mascot from the Curve office. I used to have a pet pig and she would go with me to the office every single day. So if you came to the Curve or Denuve office, you had to contend with this little gal right here, because she was there 24/7. Like she was just one of the staff.
Well, now I finally get to ask, what was her name and how long did you have her, and did she actively go into the office?
Well, if I told you her name, you would all know all my passwords. So I'm not going to tell you her name because
Oh, okay.
I better
Smart.
change my passwords. But yes, she went with me everywhere that I went, and part of that was because one day I left her at home in my apartment and she ate the linoleum floor.
Oh,
So she would just come to work with me every day. And she went to live on a farm after 8 years, and she lived till 22. Yeah.
I
But
think we had one
That's
more.
beautiful.
I'm sorry, I think we had one more slide.
We do have one more slide. I also wanted to point out this shirt that's also from the Curve collection. It's like a tank top specifically for the Chicago Gay Games, and we do have a few of the Curve Denuve merch items as well too, like the t-shirt you're wearing. I think there's a hoodie in there. I didn't want to bring them all out and hold them out, but yeah, this one's here on display. And since we're talking about gatherings and like community spaces, I thought the last slide I wanted to share was actually a reader letter. It is from a reader from Chicago. That was by accident, but the letter itself says, Dear Curve, I just read your article, Closed for Business, Losing Our Lesbian Bars. I agree that the economy is part of the problem, but also the internet. Before the internet, the only real space you could go to meet other lesbians was a gay bar. Now you can stay home and do your cruising online. Ironically, at the end of the article, page 55, there's an ad for curvepersonals.com. Meet her today. Why waste time at a bar looking? Edie from Chicago. So yeah, I think my curiosity, since I sort of grew up with the internet mostly, I'm just curious what it was like noticing that shift, and if you did notice that shift, and if you were starting to notice that with your readership as well, especially since, moving on to an online platform with the Planet Out page, and then having the Curve Personals website. Yeah, I'm just curious to know how gatherings and community spaces shifted from the start of the magazine to today.
I love that question. It's really great. So I remember where I was the first time I discovered the World Wide Web. One of our proofreaders was like, a self-proclaimed geek, and I went over to her office to pick up papers because everything was typed and then we'd hand deliver it and they'd mark it up. So I went to her job and she's like, you have to see this. This is something called the World Wide Web and it's going to change everything. And she's like, right now I'm talking to somebody in Russia. And I just thought to myself, like, okay, but how is that going to change everything? Well, obviously it did, because back then having this physical product, this magazine that you could hold in your hands. It was shiny and glossy and, had this feel of like permanence. Everything has changed since then. People in publishing have gone through this great wave of, there have been a lot of publications that have failed. It's hard enough running a news publication, a lifestyle magazine, any kind of print material. And I think that it's changed the way we meet people, obviously. But it's also changed the way we connect. We have a community group through the Curve Foundation called the Curve Community, which you can join online for free on Facebook. And it lets people find people so they're not alone. Like, I think one of the biggest problems that we face in our community still today, even with the internet, is that people just feel lonely. People came out of COVID and they're still lonely. Queer women are lonely. Not all of them. But I find like when you're first coming out and when you're a bit older, you have this different sense of need for community more than in, your 30s and 40s where you're like, I'm nesting, I'm working so hard, I'm pushing towards this goal. And you meet people through, work and that kind of stuff. And then when you don't have that, we don't have a physical magazine anymore to kind of bring those people together. So we're still trying to figure it out. I don't feel like that was the most articulate thing I've ever said, but hopefully you get the idea.
Yeah. And I feel like spaces like the Mazer Archive and Gerber Hart looks like it's a place where people, even who volunteer, who just come to research, since there's such a like pretty low barrier to entry, you can kind of just send someone an email or walk in during open hours. It's, to me, it seems like, probably because I'm an archivist, but archives, I find myself inviting people over just to look at things. If I'm working on something, I'll share photos of it. I don't know, Jen, if you do the exact same on your Instagram. So like the internet has become a place for connection, but also like looking at Curve and looking at the way that so much content was brought together in one space. Now it feels like that medium has sort of graduated into like a lot of people have zines or like online publications that are really like strongly part of their life. So yeah, I think it's just really cool to be working on this collection and to notice how Curve was like a predecessor. Yeah, like being one of the first mainstream glossy lesbian magazines. So
that's so great. Thank you. I really want to give out a shout out again to Holly. Holly was, hi Holly, working at the magazine. And I was quite sick at the time of when we sold the magazine before the Curve Foundation bought it back. And, we had 20 years at that point of archival material in a storage unit. And she didn't know what would happen to it because the new owners were in Australia and there's only so much you can do to get that material from country to country. So Holly, I believe, took that on her own to say, this is important to, to archive this material because, we're going to look back in some time and this material is going to be so important to our community as a whole. So Holly, thank you for that.
And I also want to say I appreciate all the little notes on everything, Holly, that you left. Some items have notes on them, like really contextualizing things. Some of the folders will say, this is from Franco's desk. And it'll just be probably items from a drawer or things like that were pinned and tacked onto the wall. So I get a sense of what the space looked like and what the layout could have possibly been.
And cool. I must say that, whatever Holly didn't send, 99% of it was discarded. because they just, when we turned it over, we had hopes that, they would take on an archival project. But when you're overseas, it's just too hard, and I was too sick to think about it. So thanks, Holly.
Yeah, to contextualize for folks, the magazine was bought by, I believe it's called Avalon Media, in 2010, and they were located in Sydney, Australia. So that was a time where the turnover meant that we lost a lot of this material. And that's why we are praising Holly so much right now, because all of this 20 years of material from the very foundation of this magazine would have been lost without it. And it's really important that it's here. And it's amazing that it lives at the June Mazer Archives.
Can I say something or?
Please.
Okay, I didn't know
Yes.
if I could speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Curve changed hands, I went to the office and I saw all the stuff there, and I have a degree in anthropology, and I had at one time taken like a museum class, and I remember them saying, we don't want everything like medals and plaques. We want the everyday stuff. So when I went through, I was limited with time and space. So I did go through people's desks as quick. I mean, I did it quick, and Flo Enriquez helped me, but I tried to put notes on things as best I could from the office. And then there was, like a storage over at a storage place, but I took a lot of stuff from the office and got another storage room. And then I didn't take financial stuff because I didn't want, and I don't think Franco wanted me to, like tax numbers and, things like banking things. You wouldn't want someone to have access to that. That's too sensitive. But I tried to take as much as I could. I couldn't take everything, obviously, but at least get a sample of some of the things. And then I did try to take notes, as best I could on some things. So, yeah. And then I moved it around quite a lot.
You did a great job.
Her back still hurts 10 years later. So when we bought back the magazine, my wife and I, Jen Rainin, and I bought the magazine back. And after it had been gone for 10 years, and we started the Curve Foundation, and we donated the magazine and all its archival material that's online and the, in perpetuity to the nonprofit. So, any donations that come to the foundation go directly to, our tax deductible and go directly towards the projects that we do. I found a really fun thing. Well, I found so many fun things looking for this, looking through my materials for this archive. But okay, some of we were sued by a certain French actress that I can't really talk about. In order to stay alive after that lawsuit, and we had a lot of legal bills, we had a party called Alive and Kicking, which was like you can't knock us down. Our community is stronger than any French actress. So I found this envelope in the storage with this number on it, and I looked at the front cover and I thought, it says, I don't know if you can read that, History of Kate Clinton's Hair. And I was like, what the heck is this? I think this was a silent auction item from that event. And it is from Jan Fraser, who was at the time Kate Clinton's manager. And it is literally these photos of Kate Clinton with different hairdos and the year of these hairdos. Apparently she wears no hair care products. My mom look. Oh, the spiked hair and the striped shirt, that's a good one. My weird years. The talk. I don't even know what that says.
Somebody's already written in saying, "Can I bid on it now?"
Yes, you can bid on this for a donation to the Curve Foundation.
Thanks, Allie.
The Geraldine Ferraro years. Look at that. Isn't she so cute? I mean, for that event, people came out of the woodworks. Like Leah Deliria auctioned off a date with herself. It's like people, lesbian celebrities just flew in themselves. They paid for it. The community just came together in such a spectacular way to support the magazine. And that really got us over this hump of, will we live to print another day? And it's because of the community that, the magazine was able to continue again and again. I mean, for those of you who don't know, I started the magazine when I was 22 years old. Nobody would give me any loans. So basically the money for the magazine was won at the horse track. So the magazine was meant to be. Like I knew after the day at the races that I would take this money, and I didn't realize that we'd be around in 5 years. I would never have guessed. But to have you tune in 33 years later is just such a gift. So thank you all.
Well, one of the last things I was going to say about our slides was your traveling slides just made me remember how I saw Curve magazine at different lesbian festivals, Dinah Shore Weekend. And I think that you really did a service to the community because you brought a lesbian magazine across the country to all different states. And I feel like it's reflected in the people here today. There are people that are here with us today from all over the United States. You should see when they first all checked in, they were from all different states in the United States. And I think you also made it, and I know it was the 90s, but still a lot of people were closeted in the early 90s, especially. And I think you brought that from state to state saying, hey, there's lesbians out there, you're not alone. And I think that really made a difference too. And you made a fantastic product. So people were really interested right away when they saw the covers. I know I was.
Well, thank you for that. So Julia, I know you had some other stuff to say. I want to make sure we leave a little bit of time if people have questions.
Yeah, I was going to say we covered a lot of the origin story that I was going to cover, so I feel like I don't need to repeat that, but I never tire of hearing how you got the money to start Curve magazine. It's just epic. And everyone should really watch Ahead of the Curve if you want to learn more about it. I threw the link in the chat. It's a really spectacular documentary. And if you do like this sort of programming, this is what we do at the Curve Foundation. We're championing lesbians, queer women, transgender, non-binary people's stories, trying to continue bringing Curve magazine to life through its archive. And we host events like this. So Franco, I don't know if you have any other materials that you'd like to show before we open up the Q&A, because I wanted to make space for that as well.
Sure. Well, I have as much as you have time for. I have, so when you run a magazine, you work 24/7. So I don't know if you can all see this picture, okay, but it's work hard, play hard at the Curve office. This is a picture of the Curve staff skipping school and all going surfing after a production schedule. So one day I went to actually the Chicago Book Fair, and while I was gone, I came back to the office the day after, and there was a neat little stack of Polaroids there. Apparently they had Leather Day in my absence, and they were scantily clad in their leather garb, lounging over my desk. So there was no evidence except for this pile of photos, which I so wish I still had. This is a flyer from our aftershock parties. One of the parties we did at the March on Washington. This party had 3,200 women at it. It might be one of the biggest parties I have ever been to. Definitely bigger than any dinosaur party I've ever been to. It was amazing. What else do I have? Oh God, I have some incriminating stuff in here. Here's on our southern tour, me in New Orleans, eating some crab boil. Oh, we have with the start of the foundation and the movie, we started to do a lot more bringing back Curve and Denuve archival materials and looking at things through an intergenerational lens. And here's one of the postcards that you got when you donated to the foundation. It was a set, and they had these historic covers on them. And then they have a little description about it on the back. And what else? For some reason, and I'm going to cover up this other person because this is us in St. Croix Women's Week. Curve did St. Croix Women's Week. And here's me doing naked push-ups for some reason on the beach. I don't know why this is in there. All right. One last photo. This is from our Great American Tour. And this photo, I believe, was taken in Minneapolis. We would just go from city to city. And before this photo was taken, we had done one of those 500-mile drives. And I remember, oh gosh, we have an event and I haven't gotten a chance to brush my teeth. So we're there in the back of the van and we're brushing our teeth, like just in the back of a van, like unhoused people. And some girls drove by and they started beeping. They're like, hey, it's the Curve Girls, because we had the sign on our van. And I was like, they're taking pictures, and I was like, oh, this is going to show up someplace. Like, at least we weren't, using the porta potty or something. Like, it's just, we were very, I don't know, some of the stuff that happened then would not have flown in today's society. I never dated any of the Curve staff. I will tell that right here now. But I will say that I have come back to the office during a production schedule where an employee has asked me to wait outside because they were having sex with their girlfriend at the time. So, yeah, this did happen. So, all right. I've said too much. I haven't even been.
Yeah. So now on that note, we can switch over to some Q&As because I see that we had a great one for people who don't actually, well, thank you. We do need a question at some point. We'll switch over to Q&As. If you want to either raise your digital hand or write it in the chat, we'll call on people and get our questions out. So Angela, did we have any questions that you recorded during this? Or no, I didn't think we did.
Not too many, because I don't think we were asking yet, but I did want to say that Jen had written in the chat, I run Gerber Hart's social media, and I always love looking through issues of Curve for inspiration. So many gorgeous photos and covers. And one of the things that reminded me of was in the archives, when we have students from colleges come, they always are creating zines and different things. And so they're always wanting to look at Curve magazine for inspiration as well. So I just wanted to say that. But please, everybody, write in your questions in the chat so we can get Franco to tell us the secrets of Curve magazine.
Yeah.
I see we have some hands raised.
Yeah, we got some hands raised. So Let's see. We got Barbara Kahn. I saw your hand raised first, and then we'll go with Maeve. And then we'll call on some other folks.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry for being in the dark, but I don't have overhead lighting. And I don't feel like going across the room to turn on the other lamp. So, because I'd rather pay attention here. I wanted to just piggyback on some of what was said before. One of the advantages of the internet, and now particularly of Zoom, is trying to bridge that divide between the East Coast lesbian community and the West Coast lesbian community. We have the Lesbian History Archives in Brooklyn. I had, after being out publicly as a playwright who writes about lesbians, I had no idea about this archive on the West Coast, the Mazer Archive, and things like that. And I hope that as more things go back in person, that we continue the Zoom events that have brought so many of us together. And I think we still have a long way to go, at least on my part, to bridge that gap. But I'm very hopeful about it, and I just wanted to make that comment and thank you for allowing all of us from around the country, even though you're not going from state to state, you actually are doing that right now with the foundation and on Zoom, and I appreciate that very much.
Thank you so much.
Franco, do you have any reflections on that, or should we move to Maeve's question?
I would like to say thank you and ask for the next question.
All right, Maeve, you can either unmute or put in the chat.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. And I do not have a question. I just wanted to make a statement that while there's so many that should be thanked, we all know that. And I know everybody is on board with me sending endless thank yous for everything to Franco and Jen Rainin. We love you.
Oh, that is so sweet. Thank you so much. You know, yeah, I see some really kind and friends here that I just adore. So thank you for that. You know, it's not in context with today, but I just want to tell you that one of the projects that we're working on at the Curve Foundation right now is Lesbian Visibility Week, which happens in April. And we're convening a group of just volunteers, people who wanted to be connected to the community and do some grassroots work and, you know, have some of their ideas come to fruition. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out through the Curve Facebook group, the Curve community, and just join in and see how you can make a difference. Because, you know, I was a 22-year-old kid when I got the idea for this magazine, and I did something about it, and you can do something to make a difference in the world for other people, and in turn find your own community and foster that. I think it's really important that we, you know, realize that not everyone is as lucky as we are. I know that. I have a great community around me. I have these great people. And, you know, I realized from the time that we had to put the magazine back in the day, we had to put it in a plastic envelope or a brown paper envelope. Did any of you get the magazine in a brown paper envelope?
Yeah.
And if you did, and you were out, you thought, why do I need this? Can't I opt out of it? And the reason we chose to always keep that magazine in an envelope is, number one, to protect it, of course, because who wants a mangled magazine? But more like, what happens if one of the magazines that were supposed to be covered got to that person uncovered and it blew up their world? Don't ask, don't tell was a thing. Even before that, it was just not, there was no don't ask, don't tell. You just better not be gay in the military. And a lot of our readers were in the service or in places where they couldn't be safe. And getting that magazine in an envelope where they could take it to their house meant that they could have a little connection to the community. It's a lot easier now with the internet. You can find community, although I feel like the connections are a little bit less personal. So with the Curve Foundation, we try to bridge that gap between, you know, the past and the future, the intergenerational conversations that we can have so that we're all learning from each other. Not only do we sponsor the Curve Awards to help lesbian and queer women journalists, but we're doing things like putting the 30 years of Curve magazine online archivally for free. Anyone can search that. I mean, that's pretty incredible, but let's not lose those personal connections that we so need. So yeah, just a little bit of, food for thought.
There is a question in the chat that I wanted to read. What were the biggest changes over the first 20 years of publication? Allie is asking.
Wow, the first 20 years, Allie? I would say the very first issue, which Jen, was it you? Yes, that had the picture in the archive of the first issue with the tongue over top of it. That very first issue, I don't believe it even had a year on it. It just said May, because who would have thought there'd be May next year too, and we might still be in print. We came up with that magazine. Like, it was not a single person. It wasn't all about me. It was really about the people and the connection. The staff that worked so tirelessly to put that thing out it's just amazing. For little or no money. Some of them, it was a labor of love, where they were working a full-time job and they couldn't express that part of them, or they just wanted to give back to their community. As Curve went along, we became more knowledgeable about our community, more knowledgeable about the printing and publishing in general. And we went from not knowing what the hell we were doing to putting out a publication, I think, that really we could be proud of, that I was proud of, for sure.
I know we're over time, someone said, but should I ask any more questions? What should we do?
I'm fine if anybody wants to.
Well, I still have questions, actually. I thought it was an absolutely amazing magazine for so many reasons. And one of them was I could buy it at Barnes & Noble and not just at a lesbian bookstore for the first time ever. And that meant I could buy it even in Orange County here in California, which we called behind the orange curtain. It was so conservative. And I felt like I was the only lesbian on the planet living there. So Curve magazine at Barnes & Noble was a big deal. But the other thing I really noticed when I looked through the archives at the Mazer is that it was really clear that you, Franco, paid a lot of attention to lesbian history, maybe before creating the magazine, and you actually met and took heed of Barbara Greer and what she had to say. I mean, that is not a typical start of a magazine. So how did that all happen, and why was that so important to you?
Oh my God, I love that question. So Barbara Greer, for those of you who don't know, started a press with her then wife, I think, called the Naiad Press. And it was really my first introduction to lesbian novels. So I remember the first time I saw a lesbian novel, it's like, oh my God, there's whole books for these kind of people. I was like, oh yeah, this is for me. And a lot of them went like this. Girl meets girl. Girl pines over girl. 250 pages into the 300-page magazine. Girls finally have sex and live happily ever after. And we needed stories like that. We needed stories told from our own perspective. And when I put out the first issue of the magazine, I sent it to Barbara Greer. And she called me up and she's like, I love the magazine. I think it's the greatest thing. And I said, I'm going to visit my family and they're only 4 hours away from you. Can I please come see where you make your magic? So I dressed up in my little business suit, my little briefcase, and I went to the Naiad Press offices in Tallahassee, Florida. And the women there, they were in, tank tops in 95-degree weather in the garage, stuffing books into envelopes. And Barbara just took a look at me and she said, I think you're the cutest little butch baby dyke I've ever seen. And we're going to make this magazine, happen. And she kind of took me under her wing. So props, hats off to her. I love that woman.
And so did she actually advertise Curve within Naiad Press somehow?
So what she did was she said, hey, print a flyer up and I'm going to send it to my mailing list. And they had a little circular pack. Like, you get those value packs in the mail that have coupons for different local businesses. She had one for, however many lesbians were on her mailing list, which at the time was the biggest mailing list in the world.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I can't afford to print that. That's going to cost me like $500 or $400 or whatever many dollars. So me and my girlfriend at the time were like, okay, we're going to go detail motorcycles for gay boys and raise this money because that's the only way we're going to be able to do it. And that mailer actually saved the magazine because I won enough money at the track to print 3 issues of the magazine. And then it was like, make it or break it. And that was about the 4th issue.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah. So it's my job now to pay it forward to somebody else.
I love that. Oh yeah, we got some more questions.
People were cheering. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Rose, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. It was actually about that. I love the movie Ahead of the Curve. I work at an LGBTQ center at a university, and we just showed it last semester, and the students all loved it. Faculty and staff, everyone loved it. I personally have gone through. I started at the beginning. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I had never heard of Curve. I just had completely missed any LGBTQ community growing up. And I think a lot of the people who are younger than me that I'm working with did as well, at least stuff like this, where it actually is people coming together and content made by LGBTQ people for LGBTQ people, small prints, whatever, things that, just started by someone racing horses. But I was wondering if there were any. Well, first off, Franco, you're awesome and very cool. And I like how authentic you are. And even in your movie, it didn't feel like you were playing a character. And even now, it just feels like you're being very real with us. But I'm wondering, who has inspired you? You talked a lot about, at the end, about you being inspired by the next generation. What projects are you really excited about?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I love that. And I want to know what university you're talking about that you showed it.
Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. We're in the East. We're the largest LGBTQ center in the UNC system and one of the only 2 LGBTQ centers in all of Eastern North Carolina.
Can I just say I want to come there and meet your constituents?
Come here, please. Oh my God, we would love that. Please come here.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I'd love that. And, for me, so many people have impacted me, from my friends to, obviously I got to give a shout out to my amazing wife, the women who laid the groundwork for me, the younger generation is, hopefully we've laid a little bit of groundwork for what will come next. And I think the intergenerational part of the Curve Foundation is really important, because without that legacy, history is bound to repeat itself anyway. But if we can learn from each other and we can have a dialogue between each other, we're going to further ourselves so much more. Yeah. And I don't know if you know, but we have one of our projects is called the Curve Quarterly, and we do an online publication quarterly, and it takes a look at stories from the magazine over its history and how they're relevant today. So, for instance, in the current issue that's out now, we had a story by Diane Anderson Minchell about the day that Sinead O'Connor came out to her, which was the first time Sinead O'Connor ever said she was lesbian. But we also have a story written by a 18-year-old queer girl in high school who took a look back at our Hey Baby column, where we talked to young queer and non-binary people, back in the day, like back in the 90s and the aughts and stuff. And she's continuing that work. Like, having these younger writers and giving them a voice too is so important. And that's part of why we have the Curve Award for Emerging Journalists. So we take, 5 young journalists early in their career, not necessarily young, but early in their career, which mostly has been young, and give them the tools that they need. Not only do they get a monetary award, but they also get mentorship, and they get help publishing, pieces, and they get advice, and they get, to go to conferences and collaborate amongst each other. And, being around them is so incredible. Like, I get like this energy from being around them. Like, their ideas are so different from mine, and I love that. Like, let's help them tell our own stories in their own voices, because there's nothing more powerful than having someone who looks like you and somebody that identifies like you talk about the issues that are important to you. So, thank you.
Amen. That was beautiful. I also put those links in the chat for folks who want to read that article. It's really wonderful. We are also looking for another intern who will also be focusing on bridging intergenerational gaps and connecting Curve archive history with the past and the present. And let's see, are there any other questions before we close this out? Okay, not seeing any hands raised. Oh,
I think we might have to do another one of these, because I could still ask questions for a long time, but I'm really happy to have people come back too.
Yeah, it'll be inspiration for another one. I would love to do this with like maybe another narrative centered around something else that is iconic to Curve.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say my last tagline, which is, this was not just this was not just your average lesbian magazine, people.
It's true. And with that, we will thank everyone here for coming. We so appreciate your support. Please check out Gerber, Hart, June Mazer, and curvemagazine.com/thecurvefoundation.org. We are all online. We would love your support. Thank you to Franco very, very, very much for starting the magazine. And thank you to my co-presenters for helping steward that legacy and continue this history. And so thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Let's keep those archives going. Don't make sure that you remember all these organizations in your year-end giving. Just giving a little plug.
Amen. All right, bye, folks.
Thanks, Julia. Bye.